interest and general nature thereof. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Your Worship. 8B1, and that's the easement segments, and of course we own a building on Bell Boulevard. Bylaw 2020-37 and 2020-38 deal with the same. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? So I have one. I have a pecuniary interest on bylaw number 2020-41 for first, second, and third reading. It deals with appointment of bylaw enforcement officers at the Quinte Mall. I own a business at the Quinte Mall. There are no public meetings today. Reading and confirmation of minutes of the regular council meeting of January 27, 2020, and the regular in-camera meeting of January 27, 2020. Can I get a motion to approve it? Moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Culhane. Any questions or discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Moving on to deputations, and I'll invite Sarah Daly to come up to the podium on behalf of local autism families to make a deputation to council. Good afternoon and welcome.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Sarah Daly. I'm the mother of a child with severe autism. This is him. His name is Alex, and he's 7. I'm here today to ask you to help autism families in Belleville get access to life-changing therapy for their children in time to change their lives for the better. Alex was diagnosed with severe autism at 25 months. We were devastated by that diagnosis because autism is a lifelong neurological condition. There is no cure. There is no recognized medical treatment. All that there is, an evidence-based recognized treatment for autism, is ABA therapy, which is applied behavior analysis therapy. And this diagnosis was certainly difficult for us, but what was even harder was what we were living with every day. Alex spent hours screaming, crying, biting, hitting, destroying things. He couldn't communicate with us in any way. He had no words, no sign language, not even pointing. He was not toilet trained. He wouldn't look at us, play with us. He was up at 3 a.m. every night. We were isolated as a family, as going to the mall, the simple things that you expect to do with your family, like go to a restaurant or the public pool, would all provoke epic meltdowns. I quit my job. I took the Autism and Behavior Sciences course at Algonquin, and I dedicated myself to learning about autism, but I still felt completely lost. We waited for ABA therapy for 1.5 years, and that sounds like a really long time, but at the time, the average wait in Ontario was 3 to 5 years. At 3.5, Alex started his customized one-on-one intensive therapy for 20 hours a week. They taught him learning skills like imitation. They taught him communication skills. They taught him self-regulation skills so that he could control himself. They helped us toilet train him. They taught him social skills and life skills. And after 3 years of intensive therapy, Alex is now able to attend public school in a regular classroom. He can read. He can write. He has friends. He has a long way to go, and he still needs help, but his life and our life as a family has been completely transformed. Receiving life-changing therapy early in his life made all the difference for Alex. He's now able to be with his peers and to continue to reach important milestones, which includes major milestones in learning, socialization, and other forms of development. The longer you wait for therapy, the more the gap widens and the more difficult it becomes to change ingrained behavior. Intensive therapy can make all the difference for a child with autism. It can be the difference between being a productive, contributing member of society and being segregated and essentially institutionalized. On February 6th of last year, the Ontario government announced that it would stop fully funding intensive ABA therapy and instead would give children a set annual funding amount according to age. Children under the age of 5 would receive $20,000 per year, and those over the age of 5, $5,000 a year. This represents 4 months of therapy for children under the age of 5 and just 1 month of therapy for those over 5. Since intensive therapy costs $60,000 to $80,000 per year, it has put life-changing, necessary therapy out of reach for most families. Since these changes have been in place, families and the industry have been in crisis. Families who waited for 3 to 5 years for therapy were left with nothing. Autism therapists have been laid off or have left the industry. Some areas like the North no longer have any autism services. Last July, the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services, Todd Smith, announced that in response to the objections of the autism community, that the government would put needs-based funding in place for April of 2020. However, on December 17th of 2019, the hopes of autism families were dashed once again when they announced that core services of the program, in other words, funding of ABA therapy, would not be up and running until April of 2021. This is not acceptable and puts the futures of children with autism in this community in jeopardy. While this may be a provincial program, it directly impacts families in Belleville. 1 in 66 children is diagnosed with autism. There are roughly 350 families in Belleville who are currently accessing autism services in some respect, and that is a very rough estimate. That number is growing every day. Families of children with autism are suffering now because the government refuses to listen to what we have told them all along. We are asking Belleville to join the 14 other municipalities who have already shown their support for autism families. We need your help to get the message across to the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services that fully funding intensive therapy for those who require it must happen now. I've submitted a letter asking for a declaration of support, and what I ask is that you pass a motion to approve it and send a letter to the ministry, to the MPPs, and AMO. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions for me.
Thank you very much, Ms. Daly. My colleagues, any questions for Ms. Daly? Councillor Culhane.
Thank you, Worship, through you. Thank you, Sarah, for coming and informing us what you've had to deal with. Do you have other children?
I do. I have a typically developing son who's 17. So I know the difference between parenting a child with typical needs and one with extraordinary needs.
Speaking of my own background, I worked in pediatrics for a number of years. 1 in 66 is a frightening statistic,
Yeah,
and no one has any idea the causation of this problem.
true.
If I could just ask you, if he's not controllable by his parents, how does a person coming in establish that rapport? Like, how do they work with them?
How does it work? Well, basically, what ABA therapy does, the first phase of the program is to find out what the strengths of that child are. So in my son's case, for instance, they spent a good month just pairing with him, watching him, and seeing what his skills were, what his strengths were, and what his deficits were, as compared to his peers. So first they really spent a lot of time developing rapport and seeing what he liked. Because children with autism think differently than children who are typically developing. Things need to be very tangible for them. So they would do things like blow bubbles for him when he did the right thing instead of just saying, oh, that you did a great job.
Okay. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Sarah, for coming. And a friend of mine just found out a few days ago that her son was diagnosed with autism, and I was speaking with her today, and she was telling me some of the challenges ahead, medical appointments, what programs are out there, applying now to the provincial government for funding. And I've been following this file, and I hope Minister Smith moves on this, because there was that commitment by the Ford government. They clawed it back, and parents can't wait a year. We see the development in 3 to 5, how much progress Alex has made, and now we're going to push that back. And I've had a chance in my profession to speak to a lot of families that have children with autism. The other question, too, we have a labor dispute here in Ontario with elementary teachers and high school teachers, and one of the issues is special needs, cutbacks in the Ford government and education, and if you speak to a teacher today, we need more support, more counselors, more EAs, more people with knowledge and to help out. So I'm willing to support you on this.
Thank you.
It's a commitment that the Ontario government made, and they pulled back.
Exactly.
But they're playing with children's lives and families, and we see the progress. You just touched on your son, Alex. We need to hear more stories about Alex. But
Exactly.
I just wanted to ask you, too, is Alex's experience in elementary schools, what is the support there? Inform us all, because we're
Yeah.
sitting around here, none of us have kids
Right.
in the system except Councillor Williams.
Well, we have been extremely fortunate with this school. It's Harmony Public School. They've been absolutely incredible. I've actually written a letter to the superintendent to say just how incredible they've been with him. He has full EA support, so all day long, and that's not usual. But they have been supportive of us from the very beginning, and their special education, you know, my older son, who's 17, I can count the number of times I went to his school to talk to teachers, but we meet with 8 people around the table every 6 weeks at Alex's school. There's the principal, the special education support person, his teacher, sometimes his EA comes in, the speech therapist, sometimes occupational therapists come in. There's an incredible amount of support that goes into supporting a child with autism at school. And because Alex had this foundation of learning, so he had learning skills, he had self-regulation skills, he's now able to cope in that environment, which we at one point thought was never going to be possible. But my big fear now is with a whole bunch of children who are not going to receive this therapy, coming into the school system and not having this foundation to begin with on a system that is already stressed, already has too few EAs, and many EAs are also not trained specifically in autism. Now, that's not necessarily prerequisite, but it's certainly helpful because they do think in a different way than most typically developing children.
All right, thank you. And Councillor Kelly, I'll look to you for the resolution, and we'll add in the wording that's being supplied by Ms. Daly on that. Councillor Millette.
Hi.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Ms. Daly. It's not easy to stand up and share your stories, I know. I'm going to support this wholeheartedly. It's unfortunate that this government wants to find ways to save money on the backs of families who are going through the challenges that you are in numbers that we've never seen before. And rather than find better ways to understand how, why, and where we will treat these children and give the supports to their family, I think we should be dedicating resources to that rather than worrying about the bottom line. So I'm going to support this wholeheartedly. Just on another note, my brother, by coincidence, he runs a company in British Columbia that deals specifically with diagnosing and suggesting treatments in schools. British Columbia, if you ever looked at their system, is a model for this country. And granted, my brother's making a good buck at it, but they're saving an awful lot of lives of children who otherwise would be cast aside by just what's happening here in Ontario.
Exactly.
So I support you wholeheartedly, and
Thank you.
good luck.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Great, thank you, Councillor Millette. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming. I just happened to get talking to a lady yesterday because I work part-time at a little store downtown. And the lady came in, and she is a part-time teacher in one of the schools. And she was just giving the feelings of what's happened if we don't get the funding now with this program, what can happen in the schools, because as she said, right now there's a funding shortfall in the schools helping getting EAs to help with these students, the people with autism. And if we don't get your support now, it's going to put a strain on the education system because there's no EAs EAs in the schools to support it. And this lady was doing one of them, and unfortunately, she's been laid off because of funding. And so the strain is, so in your moving forward and looking for the government for funding, are you also pushing for funding to be in the schools for more EAs to work with the autism kids?
Well, absolutely. I mean, that is a crucial piece of this whole thing. I mean, I'm only addressing
Yep.
but that is definitely a huge need. There is already a shortage, and many children end up being essentially babysat at school because there are not enough people who are trained in how to teach children with autism.
And that's what she was saying to me, that you almost have to, you're almost one-on-one babysitting them. And without this progress that you're campaigning for autism, and I know there's lots of kids out, lots of families out there with autism children. I only know 2 or 3, but I'm sure there's, as you say, there's 1 in 14 in Belleville, or 14 communities in 1 in 66. And that's a large number, so I encourage you to move forward, but I also think we need to be making sure we push the government to make sure it's available in the schools, so that these kids, once they get to schools, can, and she knew one of them had gone on to do great things, but it needs that help in the schools. So
Exactly.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Your Worship, and just to be brief, but yeah, absolutely support what you're doing, and thank you very much for coming here. The ABA therapy, where is that located? Is it in Belleville, or do they do it outside of Belleville? Are there different forms of that?
Yeah, there are 3 firms currently that, it's all private firms that provide ABA therapy. It is not the government itself that provides ABA therapy. So there are 3 firms in Belleville of varying sizes, and they do in-home, and some of them have centers as well. So most of the time it's in your house, like our therapy was in our home. It's 1-to-1, so you have a trained therapist who has at least a college degree, sometimes they have a university degree, plus specialized training in ABA therapy. This program would be supervised by a BCBA, a board-certified behavior analyst, who has at least a master's degree. Sometimes there are also psychologists with PhDs and additional training in autism as well. So that's why it's so expensive. It's one-on-one, it's in your house, it's completely customized to the child, to their abilities, their preferences, and the materials are even created specifically for them in many cases. So that's why it is so costly.
Were there waiting lists for that therapy beforehand, or was everyone that wanted it able to get it?
They're not in our community, but we personally experienced difficulty retaining therapists at first because it's a very difficult job for the frontline therapists. They're only paid about $20 an hour. And so it's a job where you get spit on, bitten, hit, and just screamed at all day. So not everyone can hack it. And so we had difficulty with that because we had some turnover in the first year, but then we ended up with children, with people that were amazing to him. And there are no wait lists at this point, but I anticipate that with the way that they're putting out the funding right now, with a large number of people receiving an interim payment at this point in time, that there likely will be wait lists for therapy because a whole bunch of people will have money at the same time. Not a lot of money, but some money.
Okay, well, thank you, and keep up the good work.
Yeah, thank you.
Just a question, you submitted a letter, or did you just
I
need
did.
our signature, or what do you need from us to
Well,
support you? Just a resolution?
yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks.
anyone else?
Sorry.
So
Okay.
the resolution will be part of Councillor Kelly's motion. So I'll deal with that in a second. Anyone else on Ms. Daly? Well, Ms. Daly, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
coming today. Again, I know others mentioned it. We thank you for your leadership on this.
Thank you.
We know that there are many families just like yours, and they all appreciate the fact that people like you are willing to step up and bring the item forward. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
My colleagues, I'm going to propose the following resolution that we consider, moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Culhane, that the deputation by Sarah Daly on behalf of local autism families, providing information and raising awareness of the need for support and resources be received, and the following resolution be adopted by Belleville City Council. Whereas autism spectrum disorder is one of the most common developmental disabilities in Canada, affecting approximately 1 in 66 children and several hundred families in Belleville. And whereas the current Ontario Autism Program falls short of allowing children with ASD to access the evidence-based intensive applied behavior analysis therapy that they require in order to learn critical learning, communication, and social skills. And whereas the current Ontario Autism Program has forced many ABA therapists to leave the field and is jeopardizing many more positions, making access to ABA therapy more difficult while sending children to school without the skills they need to be successful. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the City of Belleville requests the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services change the Ontario Autism Program in the following ways. 1. Provide and restore access to intensive ABA therapy by April 2020 instead of April 2021. And 2. Confirm the government's unwavering commitment to maintain the minimum funding level of $600 million annually for the provision of services to families. That a copy of this resolution be forwarded to Premier Ford, local members of provincial and federal parliament, and the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. You're comfortable with that, Councillor Kelly? Councillor Culhane? Yes. So moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the resolution? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. And thank you again, Ms. Daly, for attending. Next, we have Dr. Colin McPherson from Quinney Healthcare Corporation, who will make a deputation to Council. Good afternoon, Doctor, and welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillors, for this opportunity to address you. I'm here today as the Chief of Staff of Quinney Healthcare. I have a couple of members of my office with me as well. And I'd first like to thank you, thank the City for its sustained effort to support recruitment of family doctors in this area. The City of Belleville has had an incentive program in place since 2007, and since that time it has been helpful in recruiting 38 physicians to this area. And we know how critical having access to reliable primary care is to the citizens of Belleville and to the health of our citizens. It remains extremely important to sustain an effort to recruit physicians. Although many of our citizens currently are rostered with family doctors, the wait times to get in to see family doctors are often very long, and many people are still rostered with physicians outside of our community. So we know there are still gaps, and perhaps the gaps are no better seen than at the hospital. So over the past 5 years or so, we've seen close to a 200% increase in the number of patients presenting to our emergency department with non-urgent conditions. So back in 2013, we had about 5,000 of those presentations per year. In 2018, we had well over 13,000. We also know that lack of timely, reliable follow-up in the community can slow discharges from the hospital or lead to unsuccessful discharges. So I'm here to encourage and ask for your continued support in providing incentives for the recruitment of physicians, and I believe the focus should remain on primary care physicians for our community. But I would suggest today a couple of adjustments to the current incentive program. First off, I would suggest that we consider providing incentives in those years where there is money available within the program for specialist physicians, non-family medicine physicians. A good example would be emergency medicine for us presently. We have a current need for 7 emergency medicine doctors. We know that the standard for emergency medicine is to work about 10 shifts per month. And currently our group is working an average of 15 and many well over 20 shifts per month. We know that this schedule for our physicians is not sustainable. And although they are presently keeping our schedule going, the risk of burnout is quite significant. So I suspect over the next couple of years we're going to see ourselves losing physicians before we gain any, and that's in part because on our count recently, we have counted over 60 hospitals in Ontario with ads for emergency medicine physicians. So we're in a very competitive environment, and the situation is becoming critical in that particular area. That's not the only area. So psychiatry would be another example, where for several of years we have been competing with almost all hospitals in Ontario to recruit psychiatrists. So the ability to sustain a meaningful psychiatric service at the hospital has been difficult. So I would also suggest that we consider extending the program to beyond medical students and residents to include physicians who are within 1 or 2 years of graduating from their training programs. And that's in part because it's more and more the case that physicians upon graduating do locums and or fellowships before making longer term commitments to communities. So many physicians now will do short-term work in a number of places looking for the right place for them because the right fit is quite critical to physicians. And my concern is that we may be missing the opportunity to recruit people with the incentive program because we are approaching them at not quite the right time, approaching them before they're ready to make a commitment to a community such as ours. So once again, I'm really grateful to have your partnership in our efforts to recruit physicians to the area. It is critical for us as a hospital to have a working group of family doctors in Belleville, and I really do hope to continue to work with you in partnership to achieve a sustainable and effective medical service for our community.
Thank you very much, Dr. McPherson, and I have a couple questions for you. You may not be able to answer them, and that's okay. We're going to refer this to staff, which will come back and report, and so they can find it. But while we have you at the podium, it might be helpful if you are able to answer them. And I'll start off by, again, people have heard this before. This is now the second deputation today for which the municipality is being asked to help in an area which is not our jurisdiction. And it's not an area where we were ever intended to fund. But we do have a very successful physician recruitment program. And each year I meet with literally dozens of medical students trying to convince them about why our program is the one that they should sign up with, how great our community is from a quality of life, and how good our healthcare is. And I can tell you that Quinte Healthcare is a very attractive feature for those doctors as they look at here. So thank you for that. The hospitals that you mentioned that are currently recruiting through advertisements for emergency room physicians, do you know, are they providing any incentives for those positions? Are you aware of that?
For emergency doctors?
Yes.
I don't know. I'm not aware of any specific communities providing incentives for emergency physicians.
Okay. We can ask our staff to look at that. The reason why is I'm wondering if there might even be an ability to partner on that. So rather, because, again, we've added more resources to our physician recruitment program, but we also have a dire shortage of family physicians in our community. And as our doctors are retiring, we're really having a struggle with orphan patients. So, we need more healthcare of all forms in our community, not just, doctors, but nurses and specialists and everything, but it becomes difficult. The second question I have for you is, and you may not be able to answer that, and that's fine. Are you aware, does Quinte Healthcare provide incentives for attracting emergency doctors now, or some of these specialists that you had referred to?
Well, yeah, well, we do, so we work in partnership with the emergency physician group to secure what's called alternative funding arrangements. So that's in partnership with the Ministry of Health to provide a payment scheme that is attractive and competitive with other hospitals. So that's the extent of the incentive program that we would have for emergency physicians. And we do a similar type of work with other physician groups in the hospital.
Okay. I'm expecting that we're going to ask Manager Post, Karen Post, to help us with this report. So perhaps just in terms of that potential partnership, whoever from Quinte Healthcare could be in touch with her, and then they can sort of investigate that as part of the report. My colleagues, any questions or comments on this? Councillor Culhane.
Thank you, Worship, through you. Thank you, Dr. McPherson, for coming here today. I just wanted to ask if any of the family doctors that the city has recruited, do any of them do any emergency work?
My guess is yes, although I can't say that specifically. There are a number of family physicians who have been recruited through the program who work at the hospital. So they may work as hospitalists within the inpatient program at the hospital. And there are a number of family doctors who do some work in the emergency department. I can't say with absolute confidence whether any of those, but it wouldn't surprise me.
So the need, it sounds like, is becoming much more acute than it was when I was employed there. Psychiatry.
Mm-hmm.
How many psychiatrists currently?
Well, presently there's 3.5. I include myself as a half, although I probably work as much as most full-time psychiatrists in psychiatry in the province.
Well, there have been a great many changes over the course of my working days. I noticed the Canadian Drug Mart has a psychiatrist, and you can be referred via the Skype doctor, and you will be seen within 30 days. I was told that when I stopped in to inquire. Were you familiar with that?
Yes, I am familiar with the services to get assessed via OTN, yes.
Okay, and that would be provincially supported?
Yes, those doctors would be working and seeing patients via the Ontario Telemedicine Network.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Culhane. Councillor Thompson.
Just a quick, two questions. The emergency doctors that you say work 20 shifts a week, or a month rather, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
They work, how does that work? Are they a family physician, or are they strictly working in the emergency? And do they work at other hospitals then?
Yeah, so what we have is a critical need for emergency medicine trained physicians. So that would either be someone with a 5-year fellowship of the Royal College in emergency medicine, a 5-year residency, or somebody who is a family physician with at least a 1-year fellowship training in emergency medicine. So those are specialists in emergency medicine. And so the evidence supports that a sustainable practice and for the best quality of care, shifts should be relatively brief at about 8 hours, and the number of shifts per month should be regulated. So most of the physicians who are working at Quinte Healthcare who are working that many hours are not working elsewhere. Although we do have a number of people, in order to fill our schedule, who do work elsewhere, who come here to do part-time work and so on. So right now, we're sustaining our schedule based on an extreme level of goodwill and dedication of physicians from within our hospital, but also from elsewhere, who come to support us.
So those, so the emergency measures doctor, that's pretty well, that's their main purpose, is to work in the emergency measures.
Yes.
And on to Councillor Culhane's question on the psychiatry. You say you have 3.5. Mm-hmm. How many do you estimate Belleville should have in psychiatry? Because, 5, 6,
Right, yeah. So if you're asking about the hospital, we would need, I believe, a minimum of 6 in order to properly sustain the extent of programming that the hospital provides in mental health, which includes an inpatient unit, 24/7 on-call schedule, an assertive community treatment team that provides care to the 100 most severely ill, mentally ill patients in the community, a crisis service, and we also receive about 180 to 90 referrals for psychiatric consultations per month. So that's a big workload, and I'm thinking we need a minimum of 6 in order to sustain that with reasonable wait times for our outpatient services. If you're asking about Belleville more generally, presently we have a single psychiatrist really dedicated part-time to our addictions and mental health services downtown, with a small number of psychiatrists who come in from Kingston. So we could use many more psychiatrists in this area.
Yeah, and I know it's very, very challenging to even be able to, people to get an appointment to see a psychiatrist and get a family person to see a psychiatrist to deal with issues. So I personally think that that's one of the crucial things that we should be looking at is trying to get psychiatrists in the city. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Carr.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. McPherson. Just a question with regards to provincial funding. So you said you've seen a 200% increase in non-urgent patients to your emergency department. So are you able as a hospital to go to the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care and say, we have seen this increase? Can we get funding to match that? Or do you basically have to take what the province gives you and make that money work for the 200% increase?
Well, there's some complications to how the emergency departments at hospitals get funded. A portion of the funding is by performance. So if we can keep our wait times down and reduce the number of people who leave without being seen, we can improve our funding. So there's an effort to incentivize good care, which supplements base funding. So the ministry keeps this track, obviously, of all of these kinds of numbers. I would have to consult with my financial officer to really understand the complexities of how it works, though.
Yeah, thank you. So, and when you have non-urgent patients, so those are essentially patients that shouldn't be attending the emergency department, correct?
Well, ideally wouldn't be. I don't want to say they shouldn't, because if they don't have access to health care elsewhere, then, you know, of course they come to the emergency department. I don't want to fault them for it, right? But in a system that was properly staffed with primary care physicians, the numbers coming to the emergency department would almost certainly be less.
And then I was going to extend that to say that, you know, you have to go somewhere if you need care, and if you don't have a primary physician, you're going to look elsewhere. We have a couple of clinics, but they seem to fill up pretty quickly. And then the alternative is Belleville General or Trenton Memorial, for that matter. So do you think that we should, and I appreciate what you're asking of us, but if performance improves, which means is wait times go down, which means is non-urgent patients go elsewhere, that helps the hospital. So getting primary health care, which has been our focus, and as the mayor rightfully points out, it's not even in our jurisdictional lane, but we've taken it. If we continue to focus on that, then in essence we've diverted non-urgent care patients from the emergency department, which would then theoretically increase your performance because of wait times, which then would give you more funding. Is that, I know it's kind of simple, but is that kind of what you're telling us?
Well, it sounds nice, but if I could add a couple of other complicating factors. So our emergency department is dealing not just with an increase in the numbers of non-urgent patients, but in patients generally. So the age of our population is increasing. And the complexity of presentations to our emergency department is also increasing. So we're dealing with sicker people with more complex problems. So we do need to be recruiting for specialists in the emergency department. And my concern is that our numbers are getting low enough in terms of our staffing that we will be having a very hard time recruiting because nobody wants to join a small group of overworked people, right?
Okay, that's fair.
So I'm concerned for more than just the non-urgent presentations. I'm concerned for the functioning of the emergency department. And I think we're only, a year or two away from a very, very serious problem that we might have an opportunity to avert. And so I'm looking for any kind of help to avert that crash that seems to be coming.
Yeah, so if we make this a multifaceted approach, and then that way you've got a little healthier work environment there, which keeps that recruitment and that sustained workforce available there, is what you're saying.
Yeah, seeing what I'm seeing coming, I cannot not but reach out every direction I can to try to get some help because it's serious.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, and I'll be real quick. Thank you, Doctor. In terms of our region compared to others, are we seeing more of an increase? Do we have less family doctors and seeing more of our ER being the norm for people visiting compared to Kingston, compared to Cobourg, compared to, are we less or more than other regions? Or where does Belleville sit?
Yeah, I think comparatively we've seen a higher increase in the non-urgent presentations to the emergency department. There's a lot of factors that go into that, so it's not easy to say exactly why. I don't believe it can be fully attributed to the numbers of primary care physicians alone. The patterns of practice that people work, the number of urgent hours for family physicians in the evenings, the extent to which physician extenders and allied health like nurse practitioners are involved in the system, they vary across all these jurisdictions.
Okay, thank you. And I think we've noted before we're short as many as 25 to 30 family doctors or nurse practitioners, whatever we want to add to the system. But definitely our hospital is what we rely on. I know I was there not too long ago with a family member, and you guys were fantastic. So thank you for what you're doing. Being short-staffed, we didn't wait at all, went right in. Maybe it was the day. I'm sure today's a little different, but thank you very much.
All right, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Doctor, thanks for the presentation. A few weeks ago, I was in Toronto at the Rural Ontario Municipal Association conference, and I had a conversation at one of the information booths. It's the Rural Ontario Medical Program. Are you familiar with ROMP?
Yes.
Well, I brought this that I could share it with my colleagues here, and this is a program that deals with med students across Ontario, with the universities, where they come to, if it's Belleville, and they learn from doctors, and part of the education is that they grow to love rural Ontario, what we offer. And ROMP, which is the Rural Ontario Medical Program, doctors buy into it, and they work with med students from all the different universities in Ontario. And in this report that I took from Toronto, Peterborough's in, Trent Hills, Cobourg, Aurelia, and they're all showing success. And doctors have gone on to say, and hospitals are saying in this report, that the students that come, whether it's from Queen's, Western, Ottawa University, that they get a taste of what it's like to work in a hospital, and they grow to love it, and the next thing you know, they decide to stay upon graduating med school. So I can leave this with you. I think it's a program that, if we're not on it already, we're behind. All our colleagues, other communities like Peterborough, and it's across the province are doing it. So I would suggest that we look at this and get the ball rolling.
Sure, we're definitely involved in supervising medical students, residents. It's one of the main sources for recruitment across our specialties. So absolutely, we are trying to get medical students and residents into our hospital from every direction and have been for quite some time. But I'll make sure that
And the
we're,
way this program works, Doctor, is they actually help the students with moving into the community with expenses. It's all based through the provincial government. So
Okay, yeah.
if we want to end hallway medicine like the Ford government pushes, this would be another added program that could make it work.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Culhane on a second round.
Very briefly, Your
Yes.
Worship. Dr. McPherson, is there anywhere at night for people to go other than the emergency department? There isn't.
At night?
At night. It closes at 9? The clinic
That's
is
right,
open?
yeah. So overnight, I'm not aware of anywhere for people to go,
And
no.
there's no initiative anywhere that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Dr. McPherson, thank you very much for coming today. And if I can just, we'll refer this to staff to work with, as I said, and there may be a request for some information there. But I do, while you're at the podium, I do want to say thank you to you and all of your colleagues that serve our community through Quinney Healthcare at all 4 of those sites. I know you also serve on the board. I want to thank all the volunteers who serve on that board. We are indebted to you because you cannot have a community if you don't have healthcare. And while you are over taxed and stressed, you're still delivering an exceptional experience. Mayor Harrison, before Christmas, found himself in a situation where he had to access both Quinney West, the Toronto Memorial Hospital, as well as BGH, and he raves about the experience that he had there. So we understand the stresses you're under, but we really also recognize how good of a healthcare system that we have here in our region. We're grateful. I know I was at an announcement last fall where the province has recognized that Quinney Healthcare, operating as 4 different sites, needs to be treated like 4 hospitals rather than the 1 hospital the corporation is in, and they provided bridge financing or funding to allow for that. And the provincial government's working on a permanent solution, and that goes a long way. We're dealing with that. And then the last thing I just want to pass on through you is our appreciation to Mary Claire Egberts, who will be retiring this year after a very successful term where she really has transformed Quinney Healthcare into a much better organization than she arrived, which was, without overstating it, in a crisis situation. So I hope you take this message back to your colleagues. We appreciate you, we support you, and we will continue to do so. Thank you very much.
My privilege. Thank you.
So colleagues, I need a resolution that the deputation by Dr. Colin McPherson requesting Council consider an adjustment to the Family Physician Recruitment Program to allow for the attraction of family physicians that will work solely for the hospital be received and referred to staff. Moved by Councillor Culhane, seconded by Councillor McCaw. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. And we'll move on to 6.3, and I'll invite Catherine Brown, Chair of the Downtown District Business Improvement Association, and Mary Jo Currier, the Executive Director, to make a deputation to Council. Welcome, ladies.
Your Worship and Councillors, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today about safety and security in the downtown district. The health of a downtown core is a key indicator to the overall health of the city as a whole. In Belleville's case, there's been extensive investment in our core, and our BIA is working diligently to try and gain a return on that investment. Despite extensive investment in both dollars and manpower in Belleville's downtown district, issues persist that is threatening our long-term success. When looked at from a crime statistics view, we appear to experience the same or less than behaviors in other parts of the city. However, what we do experience is a significantly higher degree of social disorder. It's the impact of this social disorder and what we believe are some of the contributing factors that we're here to address with you today.
The BIA's role is to create experiences that will encourage people to choose downtown district as a destination, whether through our events, our businesses, or by assisting our property owners fill their vacant spaces. We want not only for people to visit, but to come back. And for that to happen, we have to address all aspects that affect their experience while they're here. There have been positive outcomes that are changing people's perception. The announcement of the OATC clinics relocation, the raising of the Cabaret building, and the recent decision on Memorial Arena and Legion properties. All of these things, along with outstanding tourism events that the BIA is introducing, are positive contributors to people's perception of the downtown. We're pleased with the number of new businesses seeking an opportunity to join us. On the flip side, we've also seen the opening of the Grace Inn shelter, the change in location of the warming center, and an unplanned food program in the Market Square, and coincidentally, a marked increase in transient foot traffic during both the daytime and nighttime hours in the core and along our waterfront trails. We've also seen an increase in unacceptable behavior from some of these visitors, damage to properties, an increase in cigarette and general litter on the streets, disrespectful language, and loitering in large groups. Listed here are 4 key elements that we've borrowed from London's core area action plan that really resonated with us. We're using them as a guide to navigate through this sensitive territory. Number 1, people struggling with homelessness and health issues need help. Number 2, people need to feel safe and secure. Number 3, businesses need an environment that allows them to be successful. And the downtown district needs to attract more people to their businesses. Number 1 and 2 are why we're here today. Needs 3 and 4 are clearly ours to address, and you've already seen some of what can be accomplished. But there are things that are outside of our scope of control that we need the city's support and assistance in order to succeed.
Last year, in September 2019, we asked our members to identify the priorities they felt we needed to improve the downtown district. Safety and security made the top 4 in both our business and our property owner surveys. The feedback's neither new or surprising, but we can no longer turn a blind eye to some of the challenges that have existed in the downtown core for quite some time. Challenges like threatening behavior and intimidation, criminal activity and right out in the open, including some drug dealing, and people loitering on the sidewalks, in the carriageways, and in business entrances. Although this type of behavior isn't predominant, it threatens the positive steps that we in the downtown have made in recent years and will become an impediment to our progress if we don't address them. Recognizing that safety and security is both a reality and a perception, the BIA staff and our volunteers have begun addressing the concerns immediately after they were identified. In consultation with BPS, we launched a new BDIA procedure 002 related to safety and security in January of this year. This procedure outlines not only the expectations of our members, the businesses and building owners, but of our visitors in terms of what is acceptable behavior. We've introduced a no trespassing protocol where our business members must opt in to participate. And we've also implemented an app called GroupMe, which will allow text messaging between those opt-in members when urgent communications is needed. So a good example being if a shoplifting has occurred in one store, that member can send out a GroupMe text message to all of the other stores in the area that have opted in so that we're aware and can keep an eye out. Some of our more chronic individuals have been referred through the situation table. However, this assumes that the individual agrees to participate. What we're learning is the social disorder that we're experiencing are often people who choose not to accept the rules of the other support networks and agencies. Mary Jo and I have been meeting with a number of the social agencies here in the city to establish partnerships and to add the district voice to the initiatives being considered. It's also helped us to better understand what services they're offering so that we can refer people to them and be somewhat knowledgeable in doing so. Rather than reinventing the wheel, we've concluded that working with the professionals who are funded and staffed to address the needs of the community, whether it be food insecurity, homelessness, or mental issues, are done so with the pros. But let's talk about what specifically is happening. We feel that we are at a tipping point in terms of our ongoing success for the district. Although we continue to see significant positive upswing in the overall reputation of downtown district, We've seen that through increased retail and restaurant traffic, business success stories, and the new business interest. And we've also been we've also been monitoring a noticeable increase in unacceptable activity. This negative downturn has had an impact on the morale of our residents, our property owners, and our businesses, a district that we're working hard to repair. And I apologize, it's a little bit sensitive, but some examples of the unpleasant behaviors that we've been experiencing. 2 of our Main Street businesses had sizable display windows broken and theft of high-end goods from their stores. Yes, some of the perpetrators were captured and charged, but restitution for those business owners is not a reasonable expectation. Our ATM vestibules are being used as a place to sleep by individuals who refuse to go to Grace Inn. Worse, those vestibules are being used for people to relieve themselves, with instances where individuals or an individual or more chose to actually urinate directly onto the ATM machines. So as a result, all of our downtown branches are now locking our ATM vestibules during the nighttime hours between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. This is, of course, causing some inconvenience to our customers who come down through the nighttime hours and to our residents and business owners that may not necessarily do their banking and transactions in the daytime. We have found that groups of transients carrying suitcases and sleeping bags are gathering on Front Street, and a blue cloud of obscenity is often a common occurrence. Suspicious and unwanted calls to BPS have more than doubled, and when I say more than doubled, in some cases tripled, between 2018 and 2019. The library has been working with the police as well and will be bringing in security services due to a sharp increase in reportable instances. The issues include suspected drug use, alcohol abuse, medical emergencies, threatening, abusive, and dangerous behaviors, and altercations between customers have all increased dramatically at the library in the last 2 months. The library has reported 12 incidents and issued 10 no trespass orders between January 1st and February 6th of this year. In comparison, for the entire 2019, there were only 17 incidents and 10 trespass orders issued. Our members are incurring extraordinary costs to enhance the security of their properties and businesses, and we're working with the city to upgrade all of the lighting in certain areas to act as a deterrent where we have known people to congregate. Despite all of these measures, we're noting a marked increase in the cases of social disorder in the core.
What's at stake is our city image, our ability to attract talent and new investment. This city has invested a lot into the district, and it's about protecting those investments. The BIA is working with a number of social agencies and visiting many nearby shelter and food programs to offer our support. By sharing their experiences, we're able to work together on solutions. But our efforts alone are not enough. We're asking the city for help. To be successful, collaboration is critical. The city's community safety and well-being program, which is expected to be implemented before the end of 2020, may address many of our concerns. In the short term, it may be something as simple as ensuring that the BIA is at the table to offer first-hand advice and knowledge about the impacts of the city decisions related to the core and be a part of the development of these programs and laws. In the short term, it may also include enhanced policing and/or private security teamed with a mental health street worker for the downtown district and the inherent funding and staffing implications for the city's operating budget. In the longer term, it may also include implementing new initiatives such as those now being introduced in similar-sized cities. For example, London's Core Area Action Plan that I mentioned earlier. I will email that action plan to all of you in the coming days. To address these and many other issues requires many stakeholders, such as the city, BPS, BIA, economic development, the public health unit, healthcare agencies, housing agencies, and more to work together to find solutions that work for all involved. We don't yet have all the answers, but we urge you to include us in the solutions. Thank you for this opportunity to provide insights on some of the challenges that the downtown district is experiencing, and we look forward to an opportunity to develop holistic solutions with city staff and council.
Thank you very much for your deputation. Colleagues, any questions or comments for the deputation? Councillor Culhane.
Thank you, Worship, through you. Thank you for your presentation. This is a difficult tightrope to walk, because if you appear to be critical, then you're not warm-hearted, and if you don't say anything, you get run right into the ground. I go to the library often. It's a refuge for many people. I go specifically now at least 3 times a week to go around behind the stacks and see how many new faces there are. I've so far met 5 men and 1 woman who came to Belleville with the express purpose of being in the shelter. Shelters attract people who need shelter. It's understandable, but I'm particularly disheartened for the people downtown, because I was on council before when they suffered through all of their reconstruction. Some didn't make it, some lost their life undertaking, and so they survived that. And there's a tremendous effort to revitalize our downtown, and a great deal of money been spent. And what I see more than what I would call mental illness is an absolute refusal to offer any respect or follow any rules or do anything. And I say that because I went to the library maybe a week ago on one of my trips and interrupted 3 people in the anteroom who were yelling at each other, and went through, and they literally had terrified the older lady who was a volunteer in the small bookshop. And the police had been there, they'd been evicted, and they'd come back, and they had threatened her. And I asked if the police had been called again. She said yes. And I opened the door and put the run on them myself, because there's consequence to threatening me. So my understanding is, if you are rational enough to understand that there's consequence, that's not mental illness. That is a method, a learned method of behavior, and we don't have to accept that, nor should we. I'm glad that you came today, and I would happily take part in any meetings or do whatever I can to support the downtown in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Culhane. Anyone else? Any comments? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, ladies. Good job being the council rep on downtown. We've seen a lot of great things happen in the last year. We have a great strategic plan. We have a great leader in both Catherine and Mary Jo, who are bringing this forward. And unfortunately, the downtown is a barometer for the city. We know we have a homelessness problem. We know we have problems with housing. We have a mental health crisis in the city. There's a lot of different things happening at once, and downtown is going to be the center of that, as the core of the city as we stand here today. And I think what I'd like to say is we've been trying to press on from the board, and from my position in the board, is downtown needs to be involved more with more discussions and more of this conversation when it comes to dealing with the housing issue and all the rest of the crises we have. And I think what downtown is asking for is to be there, because they're seeing it firsthand. And whether we need, as we go back to operating budget soon, to talk about our housing action plan, and when it talks to dealing with, I know Mr. Millett, Councillor Millett sits on the Canadian Mental Health Board, but more when we're talking about social services and things that we're doing with that, I think we need to talk a little bit more about it, sometimes more into micro committees, but to make sure that downtown is there at the same time. I believe in the downtown. I believe in the work that we've done this year, specifically around the strategic plan. I'm most excited we're getting finally our economic development committee going just for the downtown, which tonight we'll talk about putting that seat also on our ACDEV committee. But that's really important, because that's some of the work to drive more business downtown. It's going to be helping, hopefully, see that memorial project proliferate. More of that stuff's happening downtown, but I just think downtown needs to be a part of it. I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at solutions that London, Ontario may have, and there's other experts I've heard of too that are across Canada that might be able to help us. So I think it's great that downtown is vocal, and that. But my point is, let's keep moving forward. We've not started to develop a lot of the action. We've talked a lot, but as soon as we get the action going, hopefully downtown will be the first one to say this is working. We're seeing the benefits of that.
Thank you. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question. In working with the BPS, and you've touched on a couple of issues, and I'm just going to say very clearly that being homeless, having a drug addiction, and having mental health does not equal criminal activity 100% of the time. But having said that, you highlighted some vandalism and some break-and-enters that have occurred. So I'm just going to talk about the crime minus, as you called it, social disorder. Have you worked with the Belleville Police Service in terms of environmental design or crime prevention through environmental design? So looking individual store owners, building owners, I know you talked about some lighting. Have you looked at ways in which you can improve lighting, improve sight lines, things of that nature, environmental-wise, to prevent crime? Like, at individual homes, we have motion lights, we have security cameras, and those are all a good deterrent. Your security company is going to be the first one to plant that sign in your front yard in hopes that it deters a break and enter when nobody's home. Has the BDIA through the business owners done a store-by-store look at crime prevention through environmental design?
Do you want to answer?
So in terms of doing it store by store, have we done that? No. We are, as part of the protocol that we introduced in January, talk about things that they can do, things that we would expect them to do. One of the reasons it was actually one of the initial discussions we had was the extraordinary expenses that people are incurring to upgrade fencing and gates and motion lights and security systems and just general cleanup, being on site. So that's happening throughout. Have we formalized our approach to doing that? No, other than the procedure that has been implemented and the opportunity for people to participate in the no trespass part of our business. In related to crime, so we did cite the two significant instances because in both cases the business owners were probably not in a good position to be able to fund the expense of the damage. Both are going out of pocket to do so. And it's not inconsequential. One restaurant, it was about $8,000 to replace their front window. The second one that occurred late in January, we're just waiting to hear back from them on the cost.
Okay. A lot of times the perception, and you touched on it, Ms. Brown, is most important because we've heard that for years, that the perception is problematic, in terms of safety downtown, right? The perception of that. This probably isn't helping that narrative too much, but we have to move beyond that. The improved lighting that the city has put in downtown has made a difference, I think. Certainly the better lighting you have, the better chance from a prevention point of view, a safety point of view. The biggest thing is foot traffic as well. The more foot traffic that we have downtown, people going about their day, and in evening in particular, you're less likely to run into difficulties. Like for criminal activity, for example, the more people you have around, the more eyeballs, the less likely you're going to have a problem. And then the security cameras are just to supplement that. Have you reached out to these other organizations? You talk about Canadian Mental Health, we have many organizations, and a lot of them come to the podium here with great ideas. What I think you're highlighting is the fact that there might be some siloing that goes on. I know you mentioned the Situation Roundtable as a catch-all, but we have as a community need to start merging some of our resources together and less siloing. Is that kind of what you're looking at from a suggestion point of view?
So a couple of things. It was very challenging to come forward to introduce this because we didn't want to damage the brand that we've built. This is not the message that we want out for downtown district. We're taking a huge risk, and we probably will take a little bit of a PR backlash for exposing the sort of underbelly of downtown, but it's actually not as prevalent as, let's say, 5 years ago. So I just want to clear that up. We're doing a lot of engaging with other associations. So engaged to date, we meet with BPS once a month. We have met with the City of Belleville Parks to deal with some summer issues. I've had conversations with Sandy Sidsworth at CMHC. I've met with Debbie Shuttleworth at Quinny Healthcare. Grace Inn, we have visited. Peer support, I've met 3 times with now. CDC, I'm on the committee, which is working on food insecurities. Bridge Street United Food Program, just met with them today for the 3rd time. And so, yes, we're heavily involved. In fact, it takes a lot of my time, partly because I'm compassionate and partly because I'm the one that's on the front line. I'm the one that gets the call. But it sure would be nice to have, and in terms of CDC and Bridge Street United, they are working on an integrated approach, almost like a triage, but that's not going to happen tomorrow, and we have problems now.
Yeah, so I don't know if you, I know you talk with the Belleville police officer that's assigned. Have you made a formal presentation to the Police Service Board?
Not informal, and I'll share with you, I did have an opportunity. Of course, we meet with Mark Hall once a month. Mark has many other things in addition to his being the community policing officer. So on Friday evening at a social event, I took the opportunity to talk with Ron Gignac, and I apologize if I said that wrong, our chief of police, about the deputation and some of the things that we were suggesting. And in fact, there are some additions into our deck that Ron asked us to include. He offered his full support for what it is that we're recommending. The challenge being is resources. He just doesn't have any more police officers to put into the downtown. And so he's stretching those resources that he does have. But he also made mention of the fact a mental health street worker to complement the officers that he is putting into the area would be a tremendous asset. I'll also share with you, over the last 3 weeks, BPS has been running an ATM vestibule run that was originally scheduled 2 times a night, which is to go in and sweep and encourage the people who are sleeping in there to move either to the warming center or to Grace Inn. They've upped it to 3 times a night. And of course now they're doing it predominantly between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. as businesses close down and before the doors are locked. And in fact, it may be after they're locked, somebody's inside. So we haven't done anything formal in terms of the Police Services Board or to the senior officers, but we've at least had the conversations to say this is what we're experiencing and this is what we'd like to suggest, and they have offered the verbal support to that. So.
Okay, and certainly just in terms of the criminal activity side, and that is in the police service jurisdiction, and so they should be taking the primary role on that. I agree with what the chief has said, though, in terms of a mental health worker. Unfortunately, our police service becomes the front line for mental health when it shouldn't be. And I know that the province is working through the Police Service Act on that front. This is where we need some of our other community agencies to step up that have mental health professionals to look at it. I know that some communities have like the roving mental health teams that go out and run into people that are experiencing difficulty. Listening to Dr. McPherson say that, you know, we're in a deep shortage of psychiatry. You know, and we all know and listen to some of our colleagues here that sit on mental health, there's significant gaps, and that's where people fall through. So, you know, I encourage what you're doing. I guess the best message, too, is it's still a safe place to be, and we encourage our citizens to visit our downtown and take advantage of all that can be experienced here in terms of shops and restaurants and the artistic world that we promote down here. So I appreciate that. While I'm on my feet, since the library was discussed, I just, as chair of the library board, just would bring council kind of up to date, is we have had some issues for sure. I'm not going to mince words. We had issues once the warming center went there. But we have been taking some proactive approach. I want to first thank Trevor Pross, the CAO, and his team. They have been working hard in terms of identifying these issues that have occurred. We want the library to be a safe place, a community place. And if you're there for the purpose of accessing those resources and have it as a community space and a space of discovery and learning, that's there. But loitering is not going to be tolerated, and if you're not there for that purpose. So we are going to be bringing in some security personnel in order to make sure that we have a safe environment there. The board deliberated quite a bit about it because that sends a message as well. However, we feel that it's necessary. Our staff have been very good in terms of training on diffusing. At the end of the day, what we're running into is people with mental health issues. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And so I think what we have to ask our volunteer agencies and our community agencies that come and ask for funding, you need to stop working in silos. You have to integrate as much as possible, and mental health has to be on the forefront. And if we do that, then we're going to catch people that are falling through the cracks. But if we don't, and we're always in our little backyards doing our own little thing, then we're going to continue to have this problem. So I'd encourage the agencies that do great work to look at expanding, to look at integrating, look at being proactive. It sounds as though we have a certain time of day in which we see these issues, and so therefore maybe these agencies need to refocus their time, not so much in the daytime, but in the evening when people are looking for help and maybe don't have the ability to ask for it. And that's what we're running into. But the library continues to be a very safe place. Our staff are doing excellent work in terms of making it such, and so I would encourage people to continue to visit the library.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Millette.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I want to thank Ms. Brown and Ms. Courier for taking the time, and clearly you've outlined in numerous points the issues that are happening downtown. As a member of the Canadian Mental Health Association board with Councillor Thompson, we realize only too well the scope of the problem with mental health. It's one of the silos that I think Councillor Carr referred to. There are many silos, and there is criminal activity, but there's clearly a need for coordination. As you see, a coordinating mechanism is needed for all the various stakeholders, and I think that would help eliminate the silos that we're talking about. I would be in full support, as I'm sure many around our table would be, for some form of an ad hoc committee at some point, perhaps in the spring once the warmer weather's here, to rethink things like where and how we're doing our warming center, perhaps expanding it. I think we have to invite to the table some of the representative organizations in this city who are not mentioned in the groups that we're talking about. I'm thinking the Not Alone Quinte team, which for whatever reason in some circles are in an adversarial situation. But let's face it, they're working with and they know who an awful lot of the people who were the subject of this conversation tonight. We had meals being served on the market square. That, for whatever reason, is not suitable for some people, and they feel that, and I know that it's a difficult admission to make, but I know that there are an awful lot of downtown businesses who feel that that may even be a catalyst for some of the problems we're seeing now. But what I'm saying is I think what we need to do is bring all the stakeholders to the table, including the groups that work with some of the people who are needing these services and are taking advantage of these services. So if at some point in the future there's the wherewithal to create an ad hoc committee to bring voices such as yourselves to the table and bring the stakeholders to the table and work on a common front, I'd be all for it, and you have my support. Downtown activity of this sort is nothing new, as you know. I recall covering a court case when I was a reporter, and there was a murder at one of our downtown drinking establishments. Judge Stephen Hunter said the best thing that could happen is if that one notorious drinking establishment, which is still around, by the way, would close down or just cease to be. That unfortunately isn't the single solution, as we know. So there are establishments downtown that are the reason for some of these. I know Greg Sheridan at Sans Souci, who we saw tonight, has had to replace. That wasn't his first window. He's had a pool ball go through that window on previous occasions. But these are the people that we need to bring to the table. There's not a single solution to this, but I think more voices is better. So if we can do that, I'd be fully in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Millette. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, and I'll make it short. Thank you, Your Worship, for giving me the opportunity. And thank you, ladies, for coming. As a chap that worked part-time downtown in a retail establishment, I certainly want to make it quite clear that the downtown is still reasonably safe to come. Business is good downtown. I talked to a number of merchants. Business is good downtown. Can we make it better for the people to come downtown? Yes, we can. And I encourage you to do that. And as Councillor Millette said, I sit in the Canadian Mental Health Board with them. I think that's great. I think we've got to try and bring the groups together. But with the negativity you said, we can get some backlash with this, but I want to tell you, the people downtown, it's still safe to come down and shop downtown. We will overcome some of these issues if we work together, because without a thriving downtown, we don't have anything in our city. I think the downtown core is a major part of our communities, in all communities. And if we can make downtown better, I think we need to work towards that. But I encourage, as Councillor Millette said, I think we need to bring the group together to come up with some solutions. With the library, I sit on the library board also. We've overcome some of those situations. And I'm not sure that this isn't being created across a number of communities lately. I'm not sure Belleville's all alone in this situation. There's other communities that have transit people coming in. Why they're coming in, where they're going, could be because Toronto's full, Kingston's full, Peterborough's full, maybe they're ending up here. But if we can bring those people, get some help to them, I think we can solve some of our problems. But I want to make sure that we know that the downtown is still a vibrant place to come and do business.
Right, thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Sandison.
Thank you, Mayor Princhuk. So I too would like to thank Ms. Brown and Ms. Courier for bringing what I think is a pretty uncomfortable topic for discussion. And while I agree that there's some midterm things we can do in terms of forming additional committees to sort of try and pool our resources and come up with a better united front, if you will, to dealing with it. There were two comments that made that have stuck with me, and one was that we've got social disorder in the downtown, and the second comment was that we're at a tipping point. So I don't think there's, considering we're in the middle of February, the warmer months are probably going to exacerbate the problem, not reduce it. And I heard that there was a linkage between the increases that we're seeing and the activation of the warming center, the Market Square initiative, and the opening of the Grace Inn shelter. So I think that there needs to be more concrete action taken to deal with the vandalism downtown and the profanity. And so I would urge council through the police board to work that angle to its fullest. And it's not acceptable, it shouldn't be acceptable to this council that we're not dealing with it to our fullest because we've got some resource issues. I think resources can be managed, and I think if I understood it correctly, I think we need to do a sort of a full court press on this thing to clean it up before it gets much worse. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Well, ladies, thank you for coming today. And, you know, the unfortunate part of having a conversation like this is that the headlines tomorrow will be about this and not about the record number of people that we had out at the Downtown at Dusk event, the 3,000 plus people that were out at the winter event. The fact that, you know, I remember in 2010 during that campaign, the perception of downtown that it was dirty and dangerous. And 10 years later, we've spent $35 million and nobody is talking about downtown being dirty. They're now talking about what's next for it, and we want to focus on those things. But you know, this is what we as council signed up for when we volunteered to seek these roles, and so we deal with it. We have seen, and I want to thank you for your tour of downtown last week for vacant sites. For prospective businesses to look at opening there. It's the improvements that people have made to their properties is very encouraging, and we're moving forward. You know, I know we have some challenges, but I want to deal with the positives that have come, particularly in the last little while. We're not uncommon to other cities, particularly those along the 401 corridor and those right across the country. There is a national issue of poverty. There's a national issue of homelessness. There's a national issue of mental health that is not being treated properly by the federal and provincial governments. That being said, you know, I campaigned last fall on the fact that we needed to do more for our vulnerable sector in Belleville, and I'm proud to see that we doubled the funding to go to our social infrastructure fund to help people and organizations that are helping those that we would consider as part of our vulnerable community. I'm proud of the fact that you know, last week we delivered another check to bring us up to $98,000 that the City of Belleville's contributed to the Grace Inn shelter, with another $100,000 to come over the remainder of our term. That's going to help the people in need in our community. We also fund, virtually without even question, every year we fund over $13 million through Hastings County, who is our provider of social and emergency housing, to make sure that there is no need for anyone to be homeless and to be outside at any time of the year, much less the winter. So, you know, we are doing a great deal. There are volunteers that care so much about people in our community that they are funding out of their own pockets assistance to feed, ways to feed them or to help them with getting into housing. Tomorrow we have a meeting with the Not Alone Quinte group to discuss about the future of their program, to make sure that it is fitting their needs and also fitting the needs of the city. It's about balance. And it's a difficult tightrope to walk sometimes, trying to balance the needs of our socially vulnerable sector, at the same time ensuring that people can have a viable business and pay the taxes that we need them to pay in order to fund all the things that we want to do. You know, again, this is now the third deputation today dealing with items that we should be getting funding from the provincial government to deal with. Instead, it's being thrust onto the back of property tax payers. Property taxes were never designed to deal with education or healthcare or those sectors. We're supposed to be taking care of roads, providing for recreational facilities, making sure the traffic lights are working, dealing with water, sewer, police, those things, not these social areas. But nonetheless, we have to, because it affects our community, and we will do it. So, you know, to echo everyone else's comments around the table, we appreciate you coming. This is an issue that not just the City of Belleville can solve. It is an interagency issue and a multi-level of government issue. We will continue going forward. I don't know, colleagues, you know, the resolution is to receive the motion, and I know we don't want it just to go away, but I think, you know, what I would suggest is that we receive it and refer it to staff, and that coming through the next couple of months, particularly our operating budget, we can look at that ad hoc committee that has been discussed around the table to try to bring organizations together. We do not have enough resources, financial resources in our community to allow for duplication of services. We must be more efficient to ensure that the scarce resources we have are absolutely being maximized. And last week when I was at Grayson, and we were talking about meal programs and the fact that there are some gaps now for people that truly need it and what we can do, I think that is the future for us to look at, is trying to find those efficiencies, break those silos that so many of my colleagues around the table quite rightly said, to deal with it. So my suggestion is that the resolution is that the deputation by Catherine Brown, Chair of the Downtown District BIA, and Mary Jo Carrier, Executive Director, regarding safety and security in the Downtown District be received and referred to staff. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Millette, seconded by Councillor Culhane. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And thank you very much, ladies, for coming. We certainly understand where you're coming from, and we appreciate that balanced approach. Number 7 on the agenda is correspondence, and we have a letter from the Belleville Chamber of Commerce. I need a resolution that the February 4th, 2020 letter from the Belleville Chamber of Commerce regarding special events covered under their contract for city events be received, and their request for council support and assistance with the Savor the Chill and Stay a While event on February 22nd be approved and referred to staff. Moved by Councillor Culhane, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Any discussion on that? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Item number 8, Committee of the Whole. Motion to go into Committee of the Whole to hear and consider reports, passing of recommendations and resolutions with Councillor Sandison in the chair. Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor McCaw. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Councillor Sandison, the chair is yours.
Okay. 8A reports. The agenda shall include under reports items that warrant individual attention from council. First up is 8A1, 2019 tax adjustments, section 357 in parentheses 1 and 358 in parentheses 1 of the Municipal Act. Manager of Revenue and Taxation's report number MRT 2020-01. The resolution reads that the adjustment of realty taxes under sections 357.1, 358.1 of the Municipal Act for the 2019 taxation year be authorized in accordance with the list supplied by the Manager of Revenue and Taxation on February the 10th, 2020, and the total amount of $51,297.22 be approved. Moved by Councillor Councillor McCaw, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Any comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries. 8A2, provide for the provision of emergency fire dispatch services. Deputy Fire Chief's report number DCFES-2020-02. Resolution reads that a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2010-151, being a bylaw authorizing execution of agreements with municipalities for the provision of emergency fire dispatch services, to include the municipality of Quinte West, be prepared for council's consideration. Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Any comments or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries. 8A3, in-house mobility service, General Manager, Transportation and Operations Services, report number GMTOS-2020-07. Resolution reads that pursuant to the General Manager of Transportation and Operations Services report number GMTOS-2020-07 regarding in-house mobility service, that council endorse moving the mobility service in-house, and that pre-budget approval of the 2020 operating budget year be authorized for mobility bus service in the amount of $29,500 to be funded through the provincial gas tax to cover the cost of training and onboarding staff, and that 3 permanent bus operator positions and 2 scheduler dispatcher positions within the transportation and operations services transit section be created. Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Any comments or discussion? Councillor Thompson.
On page 16, under, with respect to the supplementary mobile service contract currently provided by Para Taxi Service, by providing scheduled mobility services in-house, the need for additional taxi services will not be warranted. Most municipal transit services do not offer a taxi service. My question is, how are we going to, is the mobility service going to run longer to compensate for the mobility bus service not having a taxi service?
Okay, so in answer to your question, so as chair of the transit committee, am I allowed to answer this, or should I direct it to? Okay, so the current service provider, the core service for that service provider is school buses. So when they experience some staffing issues, it's basically the mobility transit that suffers as a result, and they provide that service to us. So as a result of that, they will then employ taxi services, which is A, inefficient, and B, costly. So part of the whole reason for bringing it in-house is to make it more operationally effective and reduce our costs.
So, yeah, so I'm just trying to get clarification on it. So we will not be using the taxi service anymore?
We shouldn't have to, no.
So our mobility bus service then will run where the taxi service was filling in. Our mobility bus service then will run to cover for that.
That's correct.
And at what time will it run then, mobility bus service? Will it run the same scheduled time as the regular bus service?
So I'm going to defer that question to Manager Buck, who's in the audience, if everybody will agree to let him come up.
Yep.
Yep. Thanks, Paul.
Good afternoon, good evening. Through the chair to Councillor Thompson, yes, the mobility service will operate the same operating hours as conventional transit. We are obligated to do that under the Act.
Sorry, and I don't need to. Will it run the late schedule like the bus service too? So
Yes,
what time will that mobility bus service run then? So if somebody calls when we get it in-house and want to be picked up at 10 o'clock at night?
Yes, the service will run till midnight, 7 days a week, same as our conventional transit.
I just want to commend the bus service for bringing this into house. We've always been a challenge. I sat on the transit a number of years ago, and it's been a situation where it's been a challenge to get the bus service to mobility. So by getting it in-house, and we're able to run at a later date or later time, and when we get it into house with the new program, is the hope that we can probably try to coordinate more than one person on that mobility bus at the same time?
That is the goal, yes, through the software and also through the ability to combine our conventional and our mobility service to address the first mile, last mile travel. So we will be able to move people between our specialized mobility services and our conventional service and back and forth. Make it more of a community-style bus as opposed to two separate specialized services.
Yeah, and if I may just, so will this be again, will it be a door-to-door service for the mobility bus service?
Yes, it will. Yes.
So with all of this, then, we should be able to, with the concerns that, and I sit on the accessibility, or chair of the accessibility committee, and that's, some of our concerns is the transit system's not always able to get these people picked up and get them to work or get in shopping. And with only one on a bus, it makes it very difficult to cover all the services that we need, so.
Yes, absolutely. Agreed.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Kelly.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. I sit on the accessibility committee, and I hope that this is going to have some good results. It says in your financial analysis on page 15, I'm going to quote a line here, it will allow a more customer-focused service and provide the department the ability to deal with service issues directly. One of those issues is customer satisfaction. My friend who's on the accessibility committee, Karen, on occasion will come to a meeting for 1 o'clock. She gets picked up at her home at 10 o'clock in Belleville. She's the first one at the meeting, Mr. Chair, by 11. And unfortunately, she has to leave the meeting halfway through because the turnaround time for her bus might be 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 2:30, and she misses some of the meeting. So it comes back to, and I'm going to be monitoring this, where it says more customer-focused service. Because at the end of the day, if we're offering it, they want to, whether they go shopping or help out on a committee, and Councillor Colleen's nodding her head, she's going to tell you a story shortly. We hear it all the time. But it is 2020, so let's get this going, and I'm going to support this 100% because they all need to be accessible to whatever they want to go. Thank you.
Councillor Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't even tell you a story. I'll just agree with Councillor Kelly. I just wanted to ask, very seldom do I agree with Councillor Kelly. Do the taxis still have, they still have accessible service or not? Or does anybody know?
Paul.
Through the chair to Councillor Culhane, yes, they do. They, under the current contract that we have for the taxi service, they do have to provide us with one mobility accessible taxi. And I don't see them getting rid of that if this service contract ends. They'll still require it for their own operation.
Thank you. Thank you. I support this whole.
Mayor Panchuk.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sanderson, and my thanks to the Transit Committee for working on this proposal, and it's going to be exciting to see it move along as we improve these services. I'm going to support the resolution, but I want to plant a bug in your ear, if I can, members of the committee. We are a couple months away from our operating budget, and I would like the committee and you, Mr. Buck, to consider in the operating budget the ability to expand this to the urban portions of Thurlow. We have a significant number of residents who need this type of a service. Because we only provide the service in the area in which we have our current transit system, it makes it very difficult. And I know you're working as a committee very hard about looking at options for the expansion of service, and that is a very big and complicated matter. But I think for the minority of people who live in Ward 2, particularly in that urban area that might make use of this, I think it's worthwhile for us to take a look at this. Councillor Carr and Councillor Sanderson and myself, we are regularly contacted by residents who are at the McQuiggy Lodge or elsewhere who may only have to go from the McQuiggy Lodge just off Canafton to the Sports Centre, which is a much shorter distance than many people going in Ward 1 to get there, but yet the service is not available. So I know we'll have to be creative in terms of funding, but I want to just plant that into the committee's ear that I would like to see us in a situation that we can support this service moving forward as the committee has brought forward, but look at increasing it this spring by the addition of Ward 2.
So in partial response to that, the committee is certainly aware of that, and we've had a number of discussions on how we might best approach it. We've also been privy to the results of the survey from the Accessibility Committee as well. So certainly we will be looking at a way to bring that forward. Councillor Millette.
Thank you, and very briefly, further to what you said, as a member of the Transit Committee with yourself and Councillor Carr, I know we've worked extensively to address the issues that the mayor brought up, but I would just note that in 2018, the operating budget for contracted services was approximately $425,000. That budget item has been brought down to $375,000. I'm seeing that even at that level, Mr. Buck, that we're significantly saving still and providing what is essentially an enhanced service now. And going forward, I think to 2021, we're only looking at $380,400 for the existing service. So the mayor said we may need to get creative with some of the financing to address urban Thurlow Ward. I can rest assured that it's top of mind. Is it not, Mr. Buck, that we hear the people of Thurlow, we understand their needs, and hopefully that, mobility transit service specifically can be addressed to some of those areas. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, just quickly, because of the Accessibility Committee, it's been brought up a number of times in the accessibility service, mobility bus service. I would like to make a note that the Accessibility Committee has also made Mr. Buck aware that I think the city needs to increase from 2 buses out there at a time to 3, if not 4 buses in the future, because we have a backlog. Hopefully this will solve some of it, but I think the city needs to be looking in the future, possibly adding at least another 1 or 2 buses out there in the community for Belleville bus service. So just like that, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments, or seeing none, all in favor? Carries.
Mr. Chair, can I just, now that we've passed that resolution, I do want to make a comment because I know we have our valued partners in the audience. I want to thank Parkhurst Transportation for the many years of excellent service that they provided to residents of the city of Belleville. This is not a quality issue that has arisen. Parkhurst has provided quality, good service to us. This is about our ability now at this time in our city's history to be able to expand these services, and is not a reflection at all on that service. So I just want to say thank you. They have been good and able partners who understand our decision and how we're expanding this. I want to wish them the very, very best with their other portions of their business, but I thought it was very important for us to say thank you, and that we're grateful for the work they've done for us in the past.
Thank you. Okay, 8A4 is the appointment of a member to Economic and Destination Development Committee, EDDC. Director Report, Corporate Services Clerk's Report number DCS-2020-13. The resolution reads that pursuant to the Director of Corporate Services Clerk's Report number DCS-2020-13, appointment of a member to the Economic and Destination Development Committee, EDDC, Dorothy Ashford Smith be appointed as the Loyalist College student representative, and that a bylaw to amend bylaw 2019-02, the appointments bylaw, be prepared for council's consideration. Moved by Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor McCaw. Any questions or comments? Councillor Williams.
Thank you. And just quick, Mr. Chair, I just want to thank the former member Emily Levenue Again, this committee is only formed March 11th. It feels a little longer than that some days, but she did a great job. She's still on our youth committee with Councillor Kelly and I just want to thank Emily for her work. She's moved on. She has her degree in bioscience from Loyalist, and she's actively working now. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Kelly.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I had the pleasure last week at a meeting sitting beside Dorothy Ashford Smith. She's a student at Loyalist College, as it's indicated here. She's studying EMS, and she's going to be, well, she already is on the committee. She's a welcome new teammate. So bright future for this young lady.
Anybody else? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries. 8A5, revised terms of reference for the Economic and Destination Development Committee, EDDC. Manager, Economic and Strategic Initiatives Report Number ECDEV-2020-05. The resolution reads that pursuant to the Manager of Economic and Strategic Initiatives Report Number ECDEV-2020-05, revised terms of reference for the Economic and Destination Development Committee, EDDC, and the terms of reference be amended to remove bullet point 3 and amend bullet point 4 to read, make recommendations to council regarding projects and initiatives that would advance tourism marketing and product development initiatives in accordance with municipal accommodation tax, MAT, legislation, and that the terms of reference be amended to include the requirement to have a representative of the accommodation sector on the committee and a representative of the Belleville Downtown Improvement Area, BDIA. Moved by Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor McCaw. Open the floor. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. And yes, the committee met about a couple weeks ago and went over the terms of reference, identifying, I know that it was from the mayor's comment on just looking at the annual budget approval line and then as a committee, and then looking at the MAT line. So these were the changes that were approved by the committee. Additionally to that, through staff, it was recommended to always have a member of the accommodation sector sitting on that committee. Right now that would be represented by Mr. Blair Gamble, and who's right now at the Hampton Inn here in Belleville, soon to be open. And I'm a member of, and this came, a member from the Belleville Downtown Improvement Area. They were sitting as a non-voting member, so it's good, and again, I think it was mentioned tonight, it's good to have them at the table, and I think it's better to have them as a voting member at the table, and I think that's something they expressed. I think it's something we agreed with. So those are the changes that were submitted and approved by the committee to be approved by council tonight.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Councillor Williams. We were kind of discussing bullet point number 1, which reads, speaking as the voice on economic development for the city of Belleville, on behalf of and in partnership with all various partners that carry out the many functions of this service in Belleville and in evaluating and always listening to the entire industry. So originally, I just wanted to pull speaking as the voice on economic development for the city of Belleville. As we've discussed, I don't agree that this committee speaks as the voice for economic development for the city of Belleville. We are a committee of council mandated to make recommendations to council. Looking at it further, I'm wondering if I just find that redundant myself, like the whole bullet. I think those points are covered. So I'm asking for your opinion.
Sure, and through you, Mr. Chair, and I think, and thank you for your opinion on that. This is an advisory committee, as all our committees are to council. So I have no problem. I know that you brought this up to Manager Post. I have no problem if it is okay, and I would make an amendment on this motion to remove the speaking of the voice of economic development for the city of Belleville on behalf of and just start it with, because we start with, creating strategic plans and helping the staff at City of Belleville with their efforts to generate sustained employment, destination development, and business investment by. I would start that line with partnering with all various partners that carry out the many functions of economic development in Belleville and evaluating and always listening to the entire industry. And I think the spirit of that line was just that when we come together as a committee, and this was brought up before, we're trying to eliminate duplication. We're trying to work with the various partners that we pay within the city and within the parameters of ECDEV, which includes QEDC, which includes the downtown, which includes the Bay Coney Regional Marketing Board. So if we can remove the speaking of the voice of economic development, because I think that was the intent, and just start with partner and replace that with partnering with all various partners that carry out the many functions of, instead of this service, economic development in Belleville, and evaluating and always listening to the entire industry, I think that would fulfill the spirit that we're here to work with our partners and speaking then with partnership instead of speaking as the voice. Would that work for you, Councillor Culhane?
Mr. Chair? Sure, it works, but it's just redundant. I'm all for paring things down and making them as simple as possible, that's all. Those points are covered, but if you'd prefer, I'm happy with taking out the voice of economic development.
Okay, so we've got an amendment by Councillor Williams. Are you okay with that, Councillor McCaw?
I am, but I also want to add something. Are we just amending the entire document? I just want some clarification first. If Manager Post is here, I don't know. Is she here?
So the amendment that's on the floor is to the motion, which is to accept the revised terms of reference. So it's now been amended in that bullet number 1 has now been changed to, as Councillor Williams said, partnering with all various partners.
So through you, I have no problem with that, but I just had a question for Manager Post. If we're approving this entire change to the terms of reference, I just want some clarification from her first. Yeah.
Thank you through the chair to Councillor McCaw. You're asking if we are proposing a change to the entire terms of reference document?
No, I just wanted to clarify your earlier email just to make sure I understood. Okay, so we are not adding an additional accommodator, but rather, I don't want to say labeling, but appointing Blair Gamble, Mr. Gamble, to be that accommodator.
That's
so we're
correct.
basically changing his designation, I guess, to that, as opposed to adding a third accommodator. But we're also adding the BDIA representative. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so should Mr. Gamble at any point not be on the committee, we'd be looking for another accommodator, not a third one, just
That's
the one.
correct. Yep, that's correct.
Okay,
Yep.
all right, I just wanted some clarity on that. There was a little bit of communication, miscommunication about that, so I think other than that, I'm quite clear. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Culhane.
Mr. Chair, thank you. In order to remove the initial line on bulletin point 1, am I making an amendment to the resolution to include?
So the amendment's already been made by Councillor Williams, and the seconder agreed to the amendment.
Okay, so we're going to vote on the amendment? Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Mayor Painchuk.
I wonder if it's just on page 2, I didn't get a chance to talk to Councillor Williams about this, but I don't think he'll have an issue with it. Under the non-voting members, I would just suggest you to strike the position of mayor off there completely, because I'm ex officio on all committees, not just this one. But in my role as ex officio, I do have voting privileges at all committees at all times. Again, it's not my style to exercise in that way, so I just think the best thing to do is just strike the whole line, and that way it'll be correct.
Councillor Williams?
I'm okay with that.
So the amendment Amendment was made by Councillor Williams, and the seconder agreed to it, and we're going to strike from non-voting members the mayor. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Okay, moving on to 8B, which is consent items. Council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. So I'll just go around the room. Councillor Millette?
No.
Councillor Carr?
No, thank you.
Councillor Cohen? No, thank you. Mayor Panchuk?
No, thank you, just my conflict on 8B8.
Councillor Kelly?
No, thank you.
Councillor Thompson?
No, thank you.
Councillor Williams?
Just my conflict in 8B1, please.
So if I can have a mover to approve all but 8B1 and 8B8. Moved by Councillor Cohen, seconded by Councillor Millette. All in favor? Carries. So we'll do 8B1 first, and Councillor Williams is removing himself from council. So 8B1, easement agreement, Grant Castle Corporation, Bell Boulevard corridor improvements. Director Corporate Services Clerk's Report number DCS-2020-11. The resolution reads that pursuant to the Director of Corporate Services Clerk's Report number DCS-2020-11, a bylaw to approve and authorize the execution of the easement agreement between the Corporation of the City of Belleville and Grant Castle Corporation be prepared for council's consideration. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries. Okay, 8B8, and Mayor Panchuk has removed himself. 8B8 is a municipal bylaw enforcement officers, request from the Quinny Mole. The resolution reads that a bylaw to appoint municipal bylaw enforcement officers for property known as Quinny Mole be prepared for council's consideration. Moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Millette. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries. So moving on to 8C, which is council information matters. Council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. Again, we'll go around the room. Councilor Millette?
No, thank you.
Councilor Carr?
Yes, 8C2, please.
Councilor Cohen? Mayor Panchuk? Councilor Kelly?
No, thank you.
Councilor Thompson?
No, thank you.
Councilor Williams?
No, thank you.
Okay. So So I'd like to ask for a motion to receive everything but 8C2. Moved by Councillor Millet, seconded by Councillor Williams. Any discussion or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries. 8C2, request support of the following letters, resolutions. A, Bill 156, Security from Trespass and Protecting Food Safety Act, resolution from the Hastings County Federation, moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Councillor Carr, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, just very briefly, a few of us have received an email. I know Mayor Panchuk was included on that from Mr. Brennan with the Hastings County Federation asking for council support. It just has to do with protecting farmers, their livestock, and their property. And, you know, anything that we can do in order to protect our food supply and our food chain is important. And so the province is currently introduced Bill 156, and given the agricultural component that makes up our community, I think it's important that we also show that support. There's a sample letter there to Mr. Hardiman that the mayor can sign with council's resolution in order to put support behind that bill. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question about this Bill 156. Quote, by addressing the ongoing threat of unwanted trespassing and from unauthorized interactions with farm animals, would that be perhaps, would that have anything to do with animal abuse, people investigating or trying to investigate, trying to intervene? Does anybody know?
Going to direct that to CAO Bovee.
Thank you.
Through the chair to Councillor Culhane, I think the intent is, you know, many farmers have issues with people trespassing on their property, whether they're on ATVs or snow machines, hiking, hunting, those types of things, and the farmers want to see some protection built into to the existing laws that are in place, and this is the way the province is trying to help them out.
With respect, Mr. Bovee, it speaks to invading, barn break-ins, and harassment. Any examples?
I'm not aware of any examples. Certainly, you know, the representative from the Hastings Federation of Agriculture might be able to provide a lot more detail on some of the specific instances that they've had with respect to trespassing and impacts on their operations.
I really would like more detail. It rings my bells. I won't support it.
Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. 8D, I need a motion to rise and report. Councillor McCaw, seconded by Councillor Williams. All in favor? Carries.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sanderson. Item 9 on the agenda, bylaws. First reading of bylaws, and if I can ask you, Councillor Sanderson, actually before I give back the chair, I take the chair. Bylaw number 2020-41 is the one dealing with the Quinte Mall that I took a conflict on. Can you do first, second, and third reading of those for me, please?
Okay, bylaw 2020-41, which is a bylaw to appoint municipal bylaw enforcement officers for the purpose of enforcement bylaw number 9457 and part 3, section 3, parking of vehicles on private property, and section 6, handicapped parking zones of bylaw number 12967, as they affect the areas of land and premises known as Quinte Mall, 390 North Front Street, 100 Bell Boulevard, and 190 Bell Boulevard. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor McCaw. Any questions or comments? Oh, no, you can't, first reading. Okay, all in favor? Second reading of bylaw 2020-41. Moved by Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor McCaw. Any comments or discussion? All in favor? Carries. And third reading of bylaw 2020-41. All in favor? Carried. Oh, sorry, I should have had a mover and second. Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Thank you. And again, all in favor? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sanderson. So let's go back to the rest of them. First reading of bylaws, and I'll just read the numbers: 2020-30, -31, 32, 33. Councillor Williams will deal with 37 and 38 for you now, so that we'll take that, I was just advised. So we'll do first reading of bylaws number 2020-37 and 38. Councillor Williams declared a conflict on that. So I need a motion to approve first reading, moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Millette. All in favor? Carried. Second reading of bylaw number 2020-37 and 38, moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Culhane. Any discussion on them? Seeing none, all in favor, it's carried. And third and final reading of bylaws number 2020-37 and 38, moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Kelly. All in favor, it's carried. Thank you, Councillor Williams. Okay, let's try this. The third time's the charm, right? The rest of the bylaws, first reading of 2020-30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 39, 40. A motion to approve them, moved by Councillor McCaw, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All in favor, it's carried. Second reading of bylaws number 2020-30, -31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 39, and 40, moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Millette. Any discussion on any of those bylaws? Seeing none, all in favor, it's carried. And third and final reading of bylaws number 2020-30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 39, and 40, moved by Councillor Millette, seconded by Councillor Sanderson. All in favor, it's carried. New business. Anyone have any new business today? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Worship. I wish to talk today just about the canteen at West Zwicks Park. I know that years ago we did have some interest, I think, probably unsolicited, from members who wanted to operate.
Yeah. Councillor Williams, can you just pause one moment, please? Mr. Bove, can I just have a quick chat with you? Councillor Williams, can you just join us for a second, please? All right, thank you. Councillor Williams, you have the floor.
Thank you. So I think this is an item on Westwicks Park on, again, looking at fulfilling that canteen space and probably having an offsite. I think this is an in-camera issue, so just speaking with the mayor, the CAO, so this will come in camera, and then when it's time, it'll come to the public. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Anyone else for new business? Seeing none, we'll move to motions. There are no motions, so any notice of motions? Seeing none, announcements. We'll take announcements. Anybody have any announcements? Councillor Kelly.
Just real quick, I was at Kids Got Talent, Belleville on Saturday at the Empire Theatre. There was like 600 people at the Empire, and there's a lot of musical talent here in Belleville, something in the water. And one of the performers, I want to get this in, her name is Isabella Guam. She played Saturday afternoon at the Empire Theatre. She's 8 years old. Her sister, Charlotte, they're amazing on the piano. But Isabella is performing Sunday night in New York City at Carnegie Hall. Unbelievable. She's in a North American talent show. So that's the kind of talent we had in here. I was one of the judges. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else for announcements? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just like to say that we received the survey feedbacks. So I'd like to thank everybody that took the time to fill that in and provide the feedback. Overall, I would say it was positive. I know there were some concerns that perhaps some of the commentary might be a little rough, but there were a good number of positive comments, and there were also some constructive criticism. So I welcome that. When I decided to run, I was all in for 4 years. And so for me, it's very valuable to receive that feedback at the 1 year mark. And it helps reinforce some of the positives in terms of what you're doing well. And it also helped identify some areas that I can hopefully improve my effectiveness. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. No, I would agree. You know, some mostly constructive information. By and large, giving the sense that we're on the right track, we're headed in the right direction, and people are genuinely satisfied with the performance of Belleville City Council. Anyone else for a new business or announcements? I have a few. Being that today is our only regular scheduled council meeting for before March, I'll be making all of the March proclamations this evening as follows. It's my pleasure to declare March 2nd to 8th as DocFest Week in the City of Belleville. I encourage all Belleville residents to take the time to attend the award-winning DocFest event. This event has really put Belleville on the map, and we are fortunate to host such an exceptional cultural event in our community. March 9th to the 15th is the 24th Annual Violence, Awareness, and Random Acts of Kindness Week in the City of Belleville. I encourage all citizens of Belleville to continue to support and embrace the ideology and practice of random acts of kindness, not only during the special week, but throughout the year, and to remember the tragic circumstances that brought about this first week. The month of March is Epilepsy Awareness Month in the City of Belleville. March 26th is Purple Day to help raise awareness for epilepsy. The Bridge Street Bridge will be purple on March 26th to represent this item. I do want to take a few moments to discuss the tests that our community will be called upon over the next few weeks. Late last week and again this week, flights have touched down at CFB Trenton with Canadian citizens who were evacuated from China and the areas in that country affected by the coronavirus. Over the next few weeks, we will see those Canadians deal with a period of self-quarantine. Canadian Forces Base Trenton is the best suited location in Canada for this service, provided to eventually over 300 Canadians. Quinte West Mayor Jim Harrison and I have already been briefed multiple times by Colonel Deming and other government officials regarding this operation. And I can tell you unequivocally that our Canadian Forces personnel are showing their outstanding skills in terms of logistical preparations, managing all the details that are involved in receiving and housing so many people in unfamiliar circumstances. And they are treating these Canadians with dignity and respect and have welcomed them here like we would want to be if we were in their places. This is safer for them and safer for us. As opposed to an open return policy with no screening process, The federal government has made available resources to process this repatriation protocol, which has such a low risk it is considered statistically negligible. I am very proud as mayor of the city of Belleville that many of our residents, our neighbors, our friends, folks that coach our teams and are involved in our churches and our community leagues, that many of our residents will be involved to assist these Canadians during this period of quarantine. And I am very, very heartened as well by the offers of assistance for people wanting to help them. So that's great news. Also, there is some great news in today's bylaws. We approved the purchase of some property, which will make the Canniff Mills residents very, very happy, and we're excited to share more news about the future use of that in the future. Since the last council meeting, I had a number of events I was privileged to attend on behalf of the City of Belleville. The Northumberland Wing at Loyalist College, as part of their training program, opened, and I attended with Minister of Advanced Education Mr. Romano, as well as MPP Smith and Cramp. We also had the very successful first breakfast of the new Board of Directors of the Belleville Chamber of Commerce. I was able, with Councillors Thompson, Millette, and Sandison, to present the Feed the Meter check presentation to the Learning Foundation. We also attended the Spark Program media launch, which is a tourism-based initiative to help encourage organic tourism products. A number of us, Councillor Culhane, Councillor Williams, Councillor Sandison, Councillor Thompson, attended the opening of Sugar Mama's Bake Shop, which was a real sweet treat. I was able to attend the Quinte West State of the City Chamber Luncheon held by the Quinte West Chamber of Commerce, and Mayor Harrison was the speaker. Last week, Councillors Sandison, Culhane, Williams, and Thompson and I were able to attend the Chamber President's Dinner. I'd like to congratulate the new Belleville Chamber of Commerce, the 156th President of the Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Greg Suds, and his team, and look forward to working with them throughout the year. Friday morning last week, I had a chance to have my semi-annual meeting with our members of Provincial Parliament, Minister Smith and Mr. Cramp, where we were able to discuss a number of issues as well as get some advice on how to handle them, and that was a very positive meeting. Last week, I want to thank Manager Reed and Roland Brown Cave for hosting a special meeting for the Stanley Park neighbors who were unable to attend the public consultation process last fall. We were able to share with them information regarding the new playground equipment going into that facility, and brought them up to speed on it, and I appreciated them there. Last week, Councillor Kelly and I had the great privilege of attending at Grace Inn for a tour and a presentation of our $50,000 2020 funding for the Grace Inn shelter. They have been at capacity the last few weeks, as can be expected with this type of weather, and had some good insights in terms of that program. On Friday, I was able to be part of on Saturday, I was part of the group dealing with the puck drop at the Belleville Senators game, the 100th home game of our new franchise. And I appreciate Councillors Carr was there, Councillor Sandison was there, Councillor Millette was there, and it was a very good crowd to watch the Belleville Senators defeat the Laval Rocket, which is getting to be a regular occurrence for us, and we're happy to see that. And then late on Saturday, I was able to attend after that game a birthday at the Gilead Community Hall in Thurlow. As I drove there after 10 o'clock and the roads were dark, come across the hill, and there is a full community center in our Thurlow ward celebrating the 60th birthday of Carl Huffman, who is a director of the Belleville Ag Society and a great contributor to our community. And it was so nice to see the Gilead Hall full of life and being used, considering the historical significance of that part of our community. With that, I will ask that bylaw number 2020-42, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on February the 10th, 2020, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 10th day of February 2020. Moved by Councillor Sandison, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All in favor, it's carried. A motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Kelly. All in favor, carried. Thank you.